brief overview, real property and rights. It says even though real property can't be moved to a different market, as we mentioned in the previous chapter, right? Several transactions still happen every day on the properties, over properties. Real estate agents bring parties to this product for sales, leases, and exchange, and other transactions, making it necessary for any real estate professional to have knowledge in the product to conduct a successful transaction. All right. Tomorrow, Elvis. So I'll address the quizzes at the end of this class, okay? This chapter. I'll address all these quizzes. So real estate, land, and property. So land, real estate, and property are interchangeable and one and the same for most people, right? So if I talk about land, you think real estate. If I talk about real estate, you think about land as well. But they're different. The terms define land ownership, and real estate professionals must know the subtle differences between these words to understand real estate and its laws. So in this figure that we have here, okay, you see that right on the left, right? The first thing you see is land. In the middle, you see real estate, and then you see real property. Okay. So land. Land by itself simply means nature. Let's put it like that, nature, right? So anything that's nature is land. Now, when we look at the earth and we look at our piece of land, okay, it's our land right here, surface, extending down to the center of the earth and upwards towards infinity. So we own the surface, anything below the surface, and anything above the surface, right? That's land, right? Real estate, and anything attached by nature. Real estate, though, it's differentiated by this, physical improvements, all right? So the word estate, as we'll go over it later on, the word estate denotes possession or ownership, right? So would you build something on somebody else's land if you didn't have any benefit out of it? No. So you have to kind of own it. So usually when we build something is because we own it at one point, right? So real estate is when you make physical improvements. So anytime there's human-made additions, it becomes real estate. Now, real property means you currently own real estate. Property means it's mine, it's my property, right? Somebody owns it. So property includes rights to it, okay? So it's land plus man-made improvements or human-made improvements plus rights, okay? That's pretty much the difference between these. Guys, make sure your cameras are on and you're on camera. All right, so let's address land real quick. Land is more than dirt to a real estate agent. I just addressed that. It's not just land, right? Land is the earth's surface extending to its center and upward to infinity. Land includes natural attachments such as trees, rocks, and water on or under it. So anything that's nature. Land includes surface, boulders and plants, and the underlying soil. It includes the subsurface, minerals, and substances far below the earth's surface, and again, the airspace, so above the land, above the surface, into space. Now, federal, state, and local laws govern oceans, lakes, and rivers within and bordering the United States. And private contracts, laws, and regulations can limit surface, subsurface, and the airspace ownership and rights of use. Land attributes. We've mentioned briefly in the previous chapter as well. These are very important for appraisal purposes or for valuation purposes, right? We'll talk about that, Stephen. Stephen says, so NASA owes me money. Um, there is now a limitation on your airspace. Yes, but before we used to own everything all the way up to wherever, infinity, right? So now, like we said here, government, federal, state, and so on, can limit laws. All right, but like we said before, land has three attributes: immobility, indestructibility, and uniqueness. That's what gives the value. Immobility means you can't move it. You know that. You cannot take it from one market to another. So some land substances are removable. So you can remove stuff from the land, as we know. Dirt, coal, oil, water, you can remove it, right? And topography can be changed, right? And the land's geographic location cannot be changed. It's fixed any moment, okay? Indestructibility. Can you destroy land? You cannot. You cannot destroy land. For you to destroy land, you have to go all the way to the center of the earth. Can we get all the way to the center of the earth? No. We can dig it, right? You can dig into it, but you cannot get all the way to the center of the earth. So you don't destroy land. Its physical location is there. We can remove some stuff. We can take the trees, the boulders, you can take the water, whatever. But you cannot destroy the land itself. Location remains. That's the most important here. No matter what, location remains. So permanency of land and long-lasting improvements stabilize that real estate investment. And then uniqueness. So also called non-homogeneity, means that no two parcels of land are the same. We did address that. They can have the same size, but they have two different locations. So it makes it unique, okay? Now, real estate. Real estate is land plus permanently attached human-made improvements. So land plus permanently attached human-made improvements. What are these improvements? Buildings, fences, the water lines, the sewer pipes, even landscaping. So anything that's added on to raw land, right? Anything that's added on to raw land is considered an improvement. Okay? Anything added to raw land is considered an improvement. Okay? Because nature did not put those water pipes or sewer pipes underneath. It wasn't nature, right? So anything is considered an improvement. Whether it looks good or not, that's a different story, but it's an improvement to the raw land. Now, real property is a combination of interests, benefits, and rights of owning land. Combination of interests, benefits, and rights of owning land. You only own it because it's only called property because you own it. It's called property because you own it. There's real property and there's personal property. In this case, we're addressing real estate as property. So it's called real property. Okay. In many states, real estate and real property refer to both physical property and ownership rights, while other states separate the two. Traditionally, real property ownership are best described as bundle of rights. Bundle of rights. So it's a bunch of rights that you have on a property, bundle of rights. And these rights include the right of possession, the right of possession, the right of control it within the limits of controlling it within the limits of the law, the right of enjoyment, okay, that means to use the property in any legal manner, the right of exclusion, that means I can keep people out of my property, whoever I want, right? no trespassing, right? It's my property. And I have the right of disposition or alienation, which means to transfer the property to somebody else, either by selling, by willing, by gifting, whatever. Okay, transferring the property. That's the right of disposition or getting disposed of it, right? Or disposing of it. So these are the rights that we have when we own property. Okay. Make sure you guys remember these. The rights we have when we own property. Now, this is important. What I'm going to read next is important to know how the transfer operates. Okay, the transfer of ownership operates. I'll address that in a second as well. Thank you. In England, during the Middle Ages, a seller gave the buyer a handful of dirt or a bundle of sticks tied together for material in the property. So back in the day, how they used to represent the land was just by picking up dirt or getting a bunch of sticks that say, hey, that tree right there represents the land. I'm giving you branches, or I'm giving you these sticks, or I'm giving you dirt, represents the land. Okay? By doing that, I'm saying it is now yours. Okay? So after receiving, and very important, after receiving and accepting the bundle, very important because we'll address this later on, delivery and acceptance is key. After accepting a bundle, say, hey, I want those sticks in my hand. Yes, I want that dirt in my hand. Yes, I got it now. Yay. Okay. After accepting it, you become the owner of the property. Okay. Become the owner of the property. That's how it is. So just like the sticks can be separated, so can the ownership rights to be given to different people. So I could have said, right, I have a bunch of sticks from the land. I could have given one to you, one to you, and one to you, right? So in this case, we call it the bundle of rights, right? Because the sticks are bundled and each stick represents a different right. That's how they used to do it back then. Now, before moving on, I did have a question here. Stephen, I'm sorry I did not address it before we start the class. Not Stephen, Milton, I'm sorry. Milton had a question about a contract. Can I be under contract for almost a year with $25,000 down payment and the seller just canceled the transaction? To address that quickly, it depends on your contract. So you have to see what the terms of the contract were. Technically, no. But if there's a contingency on the contract that says I can back out at any time if I feel like it, if there's any condition on the property that says I can do whatever I want, that's different. Okay, so you got to read what the contract says. Traditional contracts will say, no, once we're under contract, you cannot back out without a valid excuse. Okay, so there has to be a valid legal excuse. Okay, can the contract be written in a way where the seller or the buyer can just back out for whatever reason? Yeah, it's a matter of writing it and agreeing to it. So Milton, without seeing the actual contract, there's not much more I can say about that. Masha's asking, what would a valid excuse be? It depends. If I'm buying a house contingent upon financing and I don't get approved for the mortgage, then obviously I can back out. If I, so if I buy the house contingent to an inspection and the inspection is not favorable, obviously I can back out. Not a year later, Milton, so something must be in the contract that allows you to do so, right? Again, you need to read the contract. Stephen, we're talking about land and hold on. Milton says it was material cost. Oh, the cost of material to build. You're the buyer or the seller? I don't understand. The seller backed out because of the cost to build. Okay. Also, it was a new construction. That's what you're saying. It was a new construction and got it. All right. So there's a contingency, which is building the house and obviously the costs. So I would still look into the contract, and 1 year to build a house, it must be a really big house. 1 year, you can build half of Jersey almost. Anyway, But yeah, look at those contingencies. If not, you can still sue the seller. We'll talk about it in a different chapter, but you have up to 6 years to sue. All right, back to Stephen had mentioned something. I have a property in PA that I do not have mineral rights to. So the state does truly, the rights vary from state to state, yes. So if you don't have the right to the water, that means it follows what's called the doctrine of prior appropriation. I'll talk about it later on as well. That means that the state controls the water. Okay, Jersey doesn't have that, but some other states do. All right, Alexis, you're good now? I'll give you a chance to redeem it yourself only because it's the first day. Go. Guys, if you've not checked in yet, take advantage now. I have 39 people, 39, and we got 33 check-ins. 39 people, 33 check-ins. Something is wrong here in this math. All right. Your check-in is waiting for approval. Never seen that. Hold on. Okay, so it's the verification. You're waiting on, okay. Just like hold on a second. All right, so not sure we'll address that after class or before or tomorrow before class, okay? All right, so back to this. All right, title to real property. The word title has two meanings when it comes to real property. One is the right to or ownership of the property, including the owner bundle of legal rights. And number two, evidence of ownership through a deed. So whoever holds the deed usually has title. I'll explain later on that deed is not evidence of title. The deed is about the ownership, not the piece of paper, right? The only thing that deed does is document or record that the transfer happened. That's it. Okay, so deed is not evidence of title. Another word to remember is appurtenance. Appurtenance is often used with the word real property. Appurtenance is a right or privilege that comes with a property, but doesn't have to be a physical part. It is something that is transferred with the land or runs with it. We'll go more in detail later on. But parking spots, as an example, in multi-unit buildings, easements, rights, and other improvements are common appurtenances. The appurtenance usually transfers to the new owner when the property is sold. So it goes with the land. All right, the rights to the surface, subsurface, and air. Sorry. Surface, subsurface, and air. So there's surface rights are the rights to own piece of land limited to the surface of the earth. Subsurface, as I mentioned earlier, or mineral rights are rights to the natural resources below the surface of the earth. An owner may transfer subsurface rights without transferring surface rights. What does that mean? In oil-producing states, real estate is commonly transferred without including the rights to minerals found on the ground level. So I could sell the oil rights to an oil company to dig for oil. Okay, while I still own the property. I can sell the oil rights or the right to any oil on my property to somebody else. Why would I sell oil rights to somebody else? Guys, make sure you have your cameras on. If your cameras are not on, it does not count towards your hours. I need to see you on camera. Don't forget that. Okay? So, why would I sell oil rights to a third party, to somebody else? Masha says, if you don't have the equipment to get the oil or something, but I could buy the equipment. It's just that it's very expensive. So yes, that's right, Masha. I could just sell it to somebody else because I don't have the money for it. Why would I invest and then there's not enough oil? So might as well go with a company that already has the equipment. I still make money out of it somehow, right? Okay. That's right. I'll need to find a way to sell it too. All right, so that's separating mineral rights. That's right. Very smart. Air rights. What about air rights? So air rights allows you to sell, for instance, in New York, allows you to sell views, right? Those skyscrapers, they sell the penthouse views. That's pretty much what it is. And they sell for a ridiculous amount of money. Views. It could be the usage of the airspace. So it limits up to how high you can go in your property. And then from there on, somebody else can use it. So, sorry. Since the advent of aviation, though, air rights, so Stephen, have been curtailed to allow aircraft to fly over one's property, provided that overflights do not interfere with the owner's use and enjoyment of the property. So, nope, NASA does not owe you money because the government said above a certain height, it belongs to the government. Pretty much that's what it is. So above usually 400 feet, you start getting limited on what you can do. That's why if you guys, if you are or know somebody that is a drone aviator or pilot, right? Once they go above 400 feet, the FAA just shuts down your drone. Or the drones already come with a safety that says, hey, you reach there, it stops. Even if you try to go higher, it just stops. All right? So they put those restrictions. They issue a violation of air rights for the benefit of transportation is an ongoing battle between airlines, airports, and the nearby property owners, of course. Courts are examining air and light or solar rights as solar power develops. A new high-rise building that blocks sunlight from a smaller building may interfere with its right to sunlight, especially if its systems are solar powered. State and local laws govern the air and solar rights. All right, guys, I see some of you are talking for a very long time. All right, you're either with me or with somebody else. If you're with somebody else, please leave the class. If you're with us and focused, you're more than welcome to stay. Okay. Don't forget, it's a distraction for me as an instructor as well. I'm trying to help you guys. And if I have somebody constantly talking, and I see you guys moving or doing other stuff, it becomes a distraction for me. It's not just me picking on you, right? It's not that. It's just that I see all your faces there and then somebody just completely ignoring me until now because I'm still talking and they're ignoring. So here's what we're going to do. Ready? Ready? Shakira's trying to see who I'm talking about. Right? Isn't that what you're doing? Yeah, I know. Nosy people, I tell you. Here's what I want everybody to do. We're gonna pick on somebody right now. I want you to write in the chat. Ready? Here's what you're gonna write. Steve, come back. STEVE, and then come back. And if he does not answer this in the next 2 minutes, I'm kicking him out. You guys get how this works? It's a full-blown distraction to whoever's here teaching and also to the students. Michelle is too excited. Yeah, we're kicking somebody out. Yeah. Rock on. Oh, he just doesn't care. All right, we said 2 minutes, right? You guys can keep on going if you want. See if he says something. And they're all trying to save him. He's drowning. He doesn't even know. Nope. Nope. All right. Yeah, it's roughly 30 seconds. Who was Abdi's even writing in Spanish? Ready? You guys ready for me to kick somebody out? It's not good, is it? Oh, oh, he's looking at the camera. He's looking at the camera. He's with us. You're on your last straw, says Ashley. Zoraida, give him a break. It's the day one. Damn, we got all this Spanish going on here. 10 more seconds, says Shanice. Steve, you got to say something to the crowd. Say something. Or you're getting kicked out of class. Put you on the spot here. Say something, something. Come on. You wrote 3. All right, good. You're saved. You're saved, my friend. No, not Steven. Steve. That's why I wrote Steve. All right, so you're with us, right? Steve, you're with us? You good? You're back? Great. So now that he's back, this is how it's going to work every time, whether it's me or any other of our instructors. If you are constantly talking to somebody else while you're in class, you will get kicked out. If you're doing other stuff other than being in class, you'll get kicked out. Simple as that. All right? It's a distraction for the instructor. It's a distraction for the other students. And it shows that you don't care to be here. So day one, I gave you a break, Steve, because everybody else asked me to give you a break. Are we good? Give me a thumbs up. Everybody but Steve is giving me a thumbs up. That's not good. Oh, he is. Okay, great. Cool. So back to class. All right, so water rights. The same way we talked about air rights, right? The right to the airspace above. We talked about mineral rights, which is anything below the surface. There's water rights. Water rights could be on water that's bordering your property or going through your property. Water rights are common law, historical or statutory rights held by river, lake, or ocean landowners, and restrict land ownership. Water rights are crucial in arid Western states where water is scarce and valuable public resource, and in agriculture and urban areas. Waterfront property is desirable for agricultural, recreational uses, and each state has laws governing water and land ownership and use. So like Stephen was saying in PA, he does not have the rights to the water, right? So all states are closely tied to climate and geography, and where water is plentiful, states can rely on riparian or littoral rights. According to prior appropriation or the doctrine of prior appropriation, a state, like PA, can control all but limited domestic water use when water is scarce. So let's talk about water rights, riparian rights. Here's what I want you to remember, first of all, when it says riparian, there's an R. If it's an R, it relates to rivers, okay, or anything with a stream, okay? Riparian rights has to do with anything with a stream. So river, riparian. All right. He's getting kicked out. All right, so day one, Bruno, breathe. Don't be mean. All right, let's do this. So looking at riparian rights, it generally include unrestricted water use, right? Yeah, Nadia. The owner's use cannot interrupt or alter the water flow or contaminate it. So you do have the right to the water that flows and attaches to your property, but you cannot stop that flow or put whatever you want on the water. A landowner who borders a non-navigable waterway owns the water to the waterway center, and land adjacent to commercially navigable rivers is usually owned to the water's edge, with the state owning the submerged land. All right, navigable waters are public highways with public access. So, non-navigable stream, right? That means no boat can flow over here. There's not enough room for a boat or commercial boat to go through. So that means that the property is owned here. This is all yours. Okay? All the way to the center of that river is your property. Okay? You can have a jet ski, definitely. If it's a navigable river, so commercially navigable, right? Not a private boat or a jet ski, Nadia. Then your property line ends right here. That's it. Okay. The same goes to lakes. So if you own the property that surrounds the lake, it's all yours. Depending on where you live, of course. Like I said, from state to state, those laws vary. Okay. And that's called littoral rights. L for lakes. Okay. Littoral rights. Okay. Littoral rights means it's for lakes or large bodies of water. So something that does not have a stream, like lakes, seas, or oceans. Okay, they don't have a stream, they're just water there. Okay, so littoral rights. How do we know? So there's a federal survey map that shows what is public, what is private. But you should definitely know. And you, once you do a survey of your property, you should state immediately what is yours and what is not. Littoral right owners have unrestricted access to waters, but only own land up to the average high water mark. All land below is government owned. In some states, riparian and littoral rights run with the land and cannot be sold, and the right to use the water belongs to the owner of the bordering land, and the former owner cannot retain it. It means also goes with. Accretion, erosion, and avulsion. These are three words that unfortunately for state exam you must know, otherwise I would have completely cut off from here, right? But some of the words you need to know what they mean. Water can affect a person's land ownership. For instance, an owner is entitled to all the land created by accretion. Okay? Accretion means addition. So you're gaining land. Okay? Accretion, I want you to write addition. So you're gaining land. Okay? And this happens when soil is deposited by natural action of water. So the water is flowing, and bringing with it more land to you, right? So soil is being transferred throughout a river, for instance. And if it gets to your property where it stops and accumulates, right, you just gain land, right? But the elements can also cause land loss, erosion. I mean, that dirt's coming from somewhere, right? It's coming down the river, so it's being taken from somebody else. That's called erosion. It's a loss. Goodbye. All right, so you guys didn't hear that, did you? Nonchalantly just kicked. All right. Erosion is a slow, undetectable wearing away of land by wind, rain, and water. unlike erosion and avulsion, happens quickly. Now, natural avulsion removes so suddenly. It causes land loss more directly than erosion, like a mudslide or an earthquake that can quickly reduce a person's land holding. Right? So while one is slow, this one, avulsion, is a very fast loss. All right, prior doctrine of appropriation, I already mentioned that. It's pretty much where the states control the water. That's all you have to write. The state controls the water. They only allow you to use the water if it's like for irrigation of your land, if you're a farmer, for instance, right? Or obviously water for showering and cooking and all that stuff. So it limits the amount of water that can go to a municipality as well. All right, economic characteristics of land, scarcity, improvements, investment permanence, and area preference or location. We already addressed this in supply and demand in the previous chapter. So I'm going to go right to the next section. Is that okay? Okay, some of these things are just review. But I want you to go to the next page. That's page 16. It says real property versus personal property. Real property versus personal property. Okay, what's the difference between these two? Real property, first of all, the word property means you own something, right? Real property goes for real estate. Personal property are personal items. Okay, so these are personal items. What is the biggest difference between them two? Well, personal items I can move. Can I move real estate? Can I do this real estate? No. So that's why real estate is considered real property, right? And personal is personal property. One is immovable, the other one's movable. That's the biggest difference between them, the easiest way to define them. A mobile home, for instance, could be, before you write it down, a mobile home could be personal property, but it could also be real property. Because if you remove the home from the axle, it becomes permanently attached. If it becomes permanently attached to the ground, it becomes real property. So the mobility is the key. The moment you take it off the axle, you take the wheels, take it off the axle and put it on the ground, it doesn't move anymore, it becomes real property. So we're going to talk about that too. Fixtures, things are affixed to the property that become real property. Okay. Milton, attached to the ground equals real property. Kind of. Almost there. Yes. Because there's fixtures. Fixtures could be real property, could be personal property. Fixture is something that's affixed to the land or to the ground. It's real property if it's owned by the owner, but it could be personal property if it's owned by a tenant, even though it's fixed to the property. But we're going to go over all that. So remember, personal property is movable while real property is not. The other difference between them is how they're transferred. Real property is transferred through a deed, but personal property is transferred through a bill of sale. Okay. A bill of sale is like a receipt. Okay. So when you go to a supermarket, when you go to the hardware store, when you go to anywhere that you buy an item that comes with you, what do they give you at the cashier? It's called a bill of sale. We call it receipt, but the proper term is bill of sale. Something was sold to you. Here's the bill. That's what you paid for. Does that make sense? All right. We call it receipt because we received it. Pretty much. If it's real property, it's transferred by deeds, a document that shows the transfer of ownership. That's it. All right. The next thing we have is chattels. Zoraida is asking, when you buy a house, you get both? Well, that depends. That's a great question, Zoraida, but depends on what's included. Did you include personal items? I mean, did you look at the house and said, you know what? I like your furniture, right? I want to buy the house and the furniture. So if that was the case, then personal items were transferred as well. If not, then real estate, and not just furniture. There's other stuff. There are personal items as well. But do you understand what I'm saying? So it depends on your agreement. If it's just a structure that's being sold and anything permanently attached to it, like kitchen cabinets, for instance, the bathroom items like or like vanities and stuff, right? If they're attached, they come with a house usually. So that's real property. If they're detached, if they're movable furniture, for instance, then a bill of sale will go with those items, separate from the contract. All right, chattels or items of personal property include chairs, tables, clothing, money, bonds, and bank accounts. Plants. Question. Are plants or trees personal items or real property? Personal property or real property? Personal property or real property? What do you think? If the difference between them is whether they're movable or not, are they personal property or are they real property? Money Pit. That's a great movie. They could be both. It all depends on the intention. See, that's one of the things we got to talk about is fixtures or anything that's affixed to the property. See, if they're perennial bushes or non-annually cultivated trees, shrubs, and grasses, they are real estate. Non-cultivated. So anything that requires cultivation is personal property, but if it does not require cultivation, is real estate. That's the key difference. What is the intention? Is the intention to remove them later? If it is, then it's personal property. Okay? And these are called, for instance, fruits, vegetables, and or grain are called emblements. They are deposited into the ground with the intention of collecting later. That's another big difference between real property and personal property. What is the intention? Okay, we'll also talk about that in a little bit. If the plant is in the flower pot, it's movable. There you go. And Nadia says, well, if it's my avocado tree, it's coming with me. Sure. I mean, you want to drag an avocado tree with you? Not just a seed and plant another one? It's up to you. I'll go for a fresh tree, just saying. All right. Severing or cutting real property from the land makes it personal property. So if I cut the tree, it's now movable. So it's now personal, right? Taking it away from the property becomes. Steven says the staircase doesn't come with a house. Did you bring your own staircase? I didn't know you could do that. I know, I'm just messing with you. Anyway, look, you got 4 walls. You're lucky to have a kitchen and a bathtub and you know, everything else that's attached to it. You're lucky to have it. That's what it is. You're buying 4 walls. What was I going to say? Richard Pryor. Watch that one with Richard Pryor as well. Anyway, annexation can convert personal property into real estate. So that's what I was telling you. We buy stuff at the hardware store, right? We buy stuff like cement, stone, sand, the 2x4s, the sheetrock, all that stuff. From the hardware store to the house, it's considered personal property. Why? From the hardware store to the house is considered personal property. Why? Because it's movable. Yes, absolutely, it's movable. But once I put it all together and I put it up, what does it become? immovable, right? Elizabeth and Laura goes like, it becomes real. It was fake before. Real property. Just add property to it. It becomes real. Anyway. Jennifer, I know you're laughing inside. I take my funny pills every day. Need coffee? All right. So real estate agents. Who are the real estate agents? You guys, right? Who's a real estate agent? I like the way you're thinking, but not yet. In 60 days, we said. Right now, you're a student of real estate. But once you become an agent, you must distinguish between real and personal property. You got to know the difference. Why? Just like I was asked before, do I get both with a house? Right? You need to know, right? What's on the contract? What did the buyer ask for? What did the seller agree to sell? You have to know the difference. You cannot expect, oh, if it's attached, it goes with, right? You cannot expect that. It's not what you see is what you get. It's what you ask for is what you get. Okay? Zariah is asking, is this the stove, is that real or personal? That's a good question. Let's go over these real quick. It has to do with fixtures. Okay, it has to do with fixtures or anything affixed to the property. Okay, so fixtures are personal property so affixed to the land or building that they become real property. They have to be so affixed or attached to the land, not just plugged in. Okay, like I have TVs here. Okay, not just plugged in, right? But it has to be so attached to the land it becomes real property. For instance, heating systems, elevators, radiators, kitchen cabinets, light fixtures, and plumbing. These are all fixtures. Almost anything permanently attached to a building can be considered a fixture. How do we figure this out? Based on the legal tests of a fixture, which you can remember by the acronym MARIA. Okay, to decide if an item is a fixture and therefore part of real estate, the courts have used the following 5 basic tests. And Zoraida, you're the one that's going to tell me if a stove is real or personal property after we go through this. Is that okay? You're going to answer me after this. So, one of the things to remember, one of the tests is the method of annexation. How is it annexed or attached to the property? How permanent is that method of attachment? Can the item be removed without causing any damage to the surrounding property? Or can any damage caused by the removal be easily repaired? That's question number 1. So think about the stove. If we take the stove, does this change the function of the house? Okay, that's one of the things. The adaptability of the item as well. So very similar to the question I just asked. Is the item being used as real or personal property? For example, a refrigerator is usually considered personal property. However, if a refrigerator has been adapted to match the kitchen cabinetry, it may be considered a fixture. What about the stove then? Does it match everything? Right? The relationship of the parties. In general, the courts favor a tenant over the landlord and the buyer over a seller. Okay, so it depends on the relationship. Was it the buyer or was it the seller? Was it the landlord or was it the tenant that installed it? The intention of the person placing the item in the land, right? This should be the most important consideration. But the tenant's actions may not be consistent with the tenant's early intention. So if an installation is intended to be temporary, it should not be attached in a way that it appears to be permanent. And the final question, agreement of the parties. Have the parties agreed on whether the item is real or personal property in the provisions of an offer to purchase or lease? So, Zoraida, and everybody else, of course, is the stove real or personal property? Is a stove real or personal property? It depends. Okay. Okay. Tell me why it depends. These are the tests. Maria, method of annexation, right? Adaptability, relationship of the parties, intention of the party, and agreement of the parties. Why does it depend? What does it depend on?
Because if the stove is installed in
Say it, I'll translate.
no mar, numa bancada de mar,
Uhum.
virar e vai quebrar para o carro.
Mhm. There you go. All right, very good. The key is the way it's attached. Very good. Thank you. Alexis, that's exactly what Alexander was saying right now. And Zadi as well. If it's a custom stove, something that's attached to the property in a way that if you remove it, it damages it. Okay? I can sell you a house without a stove. I can rent you a house almost without a stove either. And I'm not required to provide those things. Okay, a stove, thank you, Stephen, is easily removed, just like the refrigerator. This should have been your key here, right? The refrigerator is usually considered personal property. Why? Because it's easily removed. How would you consider it real property? If it becomes part of the kitchen cabinetry. So sometimes they reface the doors to like match the whole thing. Or now these custom stoves that they're even lights to the touch, like you put your hand, you don't feel anything, and it's just the marmer, like the induction stoves. Thank you. So if they're custom to match it, they become part of it. They become real property. Does that make sense, guys? So that's where the depends come in. I did. Didn't I translate it? I did say if it became right.
I'm the morning.
Obviously, she's not the evening instructor. You can tell, right? She's better in the morning. Anyway, court decisions have been complex and inconsistent regarding these tests. A permanently attached property is sometimes ruled personal, while a removable property is a fixture. And an owner must clarify what is sold with the property at the beginning of the sales process. And the tenant must ensure that personal items are removed at the end of the lease. Okay. As I mentioned, when listing a property, obviously you should ask all these questions, discuss what goes with, what doesn't, what's permanently attached, what's not, and put all that in the contract. At the end of the day, everything has to do with the contract, what we agree to or not. Okay. Now, trade fixtures. To simplify, it has to do with business. Trade has to do with the business. Trade fixtures. Have you ever heard tools of the trade? The expression tools of the trade? All right, these are tools used for that particular trade or business. So when you see trade fixtures, these are items that are installed for the purpose of the business. These are usually tenants owned and attached to a rented space or building for business use. Business use. So for instance, you guys are not seeing it. There's two TVs here attached to the wall and one further in the back where I see you guys. They're attached. They're not just plugged, they're attached. They're affixed to the walls. Okay? But they're mine. They belong to the company, to the New Direction School. So can the owner claim it? Can the owner claim them to be a real property? Depends. This is going to be the best word of the day. It depends. All right. If I leave tonight, and today ends my lease as an example. If I leave tonight and I don't take these with me, tomorrow the space no longer belongs to me. Right? The usage of the space, I'm sorry, no longer belongs to me. So technically, who the TVs belong to now? To the owner. So anything that's tenant installed for business purposes has to be removed before the lease ends. Once the lease ends, that's it. Unremoved trade fixtures become landlord property. unremoved trade fixtures become landlord's property by accession. Okay. I'll give you an example, and there's a very similar question in the state exam, so use this. I cannot put the exact questions. All right, I'm gonna do my best to give you all the hints. But a pizza parlor, for instance, has in a small shopping center bolts a large iron oven to the unit's floor. So they're bolting something to the floor. It's permanently attached, right? It's a huge iron oven, so it's permanently attached. Who does it belong to? To the tenant or to the landlord? It depends. Thank you. All right, cool. So if the floor bolt holes can be repaired, then the pizza parlor owner can remove the oven when the business closes or moves. However, if the pizza oven was brought in pieces, welded, and set in concrete, so the owner of the restaurant might not be able to remove it without structural damage. At this point, the oven may become a fixture in the building owner's property. Okay? Just being bolted down is not an issue. Could have been removed. But again, if it became so adapted to the building that by removing it, it damaged the structure or functionality, right? Then it becomes real property. Go back to Maria, always. Maria, right? We don't have a Maria today, no? No, okay. Just in case everybody was going to Maria. All right. But I see some of your answers are like, oh, the landlord, because Bruno said after the lease, if it's still there, it belongs to the landlord. Well, in this case, it became part of it because removing it would damage. It's different from the TVs that I was just mentioning earlier. Does that make sense? So again, go back to Maria. There's a few trade fixtures. There are a few ways in which trade fixtures are different from other fixtures. Fixtures belong to the property owner, but trade fixtures are usually only installed by a tenant for business tenant's use, as I mentioned. Fixtures are permanent building parts, but trade fixtures can be removed and moved to another location. Attached to a building, trade fixtures may look like fixtures. You might believe that it's part of it. This is why you have to ask. Fixtures are real property, so they're part of any sale or mortgage. On the other hand, trade fixtures are considered personal property and are not included when real estate is sold or mortgaged unless there's a special agreement. All right. Yes. Just one, no more than one, okay?
If there is, for example, the stove, the person that is not belongs anymore to the person because it's attached there, but that this person can, when leaving the property, ask for the money or
For compensation? Well,
in the contract, of course.
well, everything is negotiable. So what Alice is asking is, let's say that stove is attached and I'm leaving, it cost me a lot of money to put it there, right? So can I tell the landlord I'm leaving, but I want some type of compensation for leaving it here? At some point, it's at your own risk, right? You didn't have to install it, you decided to install it, so it's at your risk. But everything else goes by what I said before. Negotiations and contract, whatever you put on the contract. Especially if the landlord is going to keep on using the property as a pizza parlor. All right, look, I'm leaving, but you're going to keep on using this for the same purpose. So I'd like compensation from you or the new restaurant owner. I'd like compensation for it. It's a matter of negotiation. But anything installed is at your own risk. If I alter this structure, it's at my own risk. For instance, this AC unit that's here, we installed it, not the landlord. Right up here. We installed, not the landlord. Can I remove it? It's tough to remove it now because again, like the stove, it's attached. It goes all the way up to the roof with all these units, right? So at my own risk, we put $5,000 here. Does that make sense? Can I tell the landlord, oh, I put this here? He's going to tell me, well, there was AC before. working or not, there was AC before. So at your own risk, you did this. You got it? It goes down to negotiations.
So did you do it?
We still didn't leave. And no. All right, laws affecting real estate. We will talk about this over the next over a few chapters. We're gonna talk about contract laws, property laws, agency laws, and obviously each state has their own laws. All right. We'll talk about consumer protection, environmental laws, federal, state, and local tax laws. We'll talk about land use laws, zoning laws, and so on. We don't need to know, as it says here, we don't need to know everything about every single law. In fact, it's already tough for you to know everything about your own law, right? But having the general knowledge of things can be very helpful in this business. Okay? Guys, with that, I am done with this chapter. You have the key point reviews that you can go over.